name is Maureen. I'm at UC San Diego Health Sciences International, and I'm happy to have you join us today for our seminar on steps to success for residency in North America. I have here with me Dr. Patrick Delaney, who's a professor of neuroscience and who's been a residency training program director for more than 10 years. And he serves as our education advisor for Health Sciences International. And also Dr. Jorge de la Torre, who's been in one of our residency preparation programs here at Health Sciences International, and I'm so proud to say he's matched a categorical surgical residency here at UC San Diego, getting ready to start in just a few weeks. So with that being said, I'm going to ask you for a couple of housekeeping items. We'd like for all of you to please keep your microphones on mute, as well as the camera on your laptop, iPad, whatever device you're logged on to. Then, if you have questions, please type them in as they come into your mind, and we will answer all the questions at the end following the presentations. With that being said, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Dr. Delaney, and he'll be giving you a brief presentation on the steps to residency, and I've asked Dr. de la Torre to share his experience, and then we'll move to the questions. Thank you. So the slides.
Thank you, Maureen. So welcome to everyone who's tuned in. Thank you for persisting through the audio dilemma trouble. Congratulations also on to those of you who've just finished with medical school, or to those who are nearing the end of internship and residency. That's a really big accomplishment. It's also a big moment in life, a time to reflect on where you are going in your career, and you know, how you want to succeed in life. For most of us, it's also a time to rethink how can I be in this case, the best physician I can be, or the best scientist. And that's really what this brief discussion is about. Click the next one there. In aspiring to be the best in medicine, it is natural to think about coming to the United States. And hopefully you can also see the slide besides hear me talking, but the US has the advantage of having 6 of the top 10 medical schools in the world. And that's primarily because of the science and research infrastructure that has led to those medical schools being so strong. So as you can see from the rest of the slide, 8 of the top 10 research universities, 7 of the top 10 universities for biological sciences and for life sciences. And so it's a good reason to think about training in the US, granted that it's a different population, which is a good thing when you're trying to round out your physician skills. And it's a different system of medicine and of medical education. And so hearing that, one might think, well, great, I will take the USMLEs and apply, and off I go to the US. And here's the problem with that. These are statistics from this last match. And if you look at the USMLE Step 1 scores there, the US seniors that matched had a median score of 233, good score. Those that didn't match had a score of 234. So it's actually, you know, slightly better, and but didn't help that group. The independents are people in any other circumstance, US citizens from other countries, or anyone who trained in medical school outside the United States. As you can see, so the mean number of those that matched is 234, and even the unmatched 221 is a good score. And so the take-home point from this is that it's not just about doing well on the USMLE, although a good score definitely helps. There's no 2 ways about that. I encourage you to look at the match statistics if you're thinking about applying for the match. There's a link on there to a survey of program directors about how they feel about what's important in the match when they're choosing applicants. Because really, an individual doesn't apply to the match, they apply to each individual program, and that is just facilitated through the match. And so this is a summary slide of what program directors think, and it matches what we've long believed in this program for the 8 years I've been here, at least. Program directors are most concerned that somebody joining their program will be clinically ready to go on the first night that they're an intern. I remember for me that was a night in the intensive care unit as the only doctor. And that's every program director's imaginary picture. So, as you can imagine, the longer time lag between medical school and actually starting internship, the more anxious the program director gets, particularly if there isn't continuous clinical activity during that time. And gaps of any reason, even if they're educational, master's degree, preparing for the USMLEs, that's not the same as being clinically active to program directors. Also on that list, just to sort of pick and choose out of their clinical unknowns, program directors in the US, by and large, trained in the US, they went to medical school in the US, and so they're familiar with US programs, and that's very much true in Canada also. And because the USMLE is not the only factor in an application, where someone has gone to school becomes very, very important. And so if the program director isn't familiar with that school, that's a relative handicap. It's not necessarily fair, but it's but that's the reality of it. The other discussion point for today, at least, is that sometimes an applicant's education to date and what they are aspiring to don't directly line up. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, it may mean adding some things to the application or changing the path. It doesn't mean giving up one's goals, though. And there's often more than one way to accomplish that goal. You can skip this one, actually. So in the interest of time, I'll tell you, here's our general approach at UCSD. There are a variety of programs here for international physicians. But in terms of the match, the most important thing, as I mentioned, is that continuous clinical activity. And so in the Bridge to Residency program, in the core program, in those programs, what we immediately do is get the scholar clinically active. We do that primarily by putting them with a prominent physician scientist, a faculty member who is in the subspecialty of interest. The scholar gets the benefit of being with them in their clinics and getting that direct knowledge, that exposure to the department of that faculty member. At UCSD, which was built on a research foundation, there are very, very few faculty members who aren't highly involved in research. And so that becomes available to the scholar also, often leading to publications or posters, things that also help when they get to the match. UCSD is a training institution. I know there are many ways that one can get some clinical experience in the United States. The advantage of being somewhere where there are residents is that the faculty are also seasoned evaluators of those residents. And so in our programs here, we have the faculty mentors evaluate the scholars periodically through the year on the same rating scale as for the residents. And so the program director who's getting a letter from UCSD Health Sciences International sees that this applicant, this scholar has been evaluated by the same criteria as their own residents by a faculty member from a leading US institution. and that faculty member has scored them at the equivalent of a PGY2 or PGY3 resident. That really helps improve the comfort level of the program director that scholar is someone they would want as a resident in their program. I wouldn't want to give the impression that that the program is purely for getting an applicant into internship here in the U.S. We want the applicants to ultimately be ambassadors for us, for UCSD, and to be leaders in their field, not just to meet the minimum qualifications for internship. And so there are a variety of programs through the year embedded here that that prepare one for later success in life also. I don't want to trample on Dr. Soliman's presentation, but for instance, we have a healthcare leadership component of the program. There is an introduction to business business success in the program, to medical education, and to translational science, depending on quite what the scholar would like to do. So we have a slight advantage here in terms of our programs of being embedded in an academic powerhouse. UCSD, it began as a research institution. It's one of the premier research institutions in the world. To me, what jumps out on this slide is is number 5 in influence for world research universities. But you can take your pick off the rest of the list there. The medical school is at the top of the list. The pharmacy school is at the top of the list. Number 11 in world universities for biological sciences. By my count, there are 20 Nobel laureates from UCSD as well. And so we're pretty comfortable that we can provide training in all aspects of medical preparation. And so with that, no, take that off. Thank you.
Yeah, I will. Should we switch to the camera?
Yes.
Yeah, switch to camera, please.
Excellent. So I hope that was helpful. That was a quite brief overview. The actual preparatory steps to succeeding in the match are actually, we spend a lot of time in that specific preparation because the school transcripts are what they are. The USMLE scores are however they turn out, but all the rest of it is something that there's still plenty of time between now and when the match starts to optimize to one's benefit. And perhaps we will discuss that at a future webinar.
Jorge, would you like to share your experience, please?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Jorge de la Torre. I'm from Mexico. I finished medical school in 2017 after concluding my social service. After that, I started studying for my STEP exams. And then after getting my Step 1 score, I applied to the Bridge program, and it's been all up since. All the steps that Dr. Delaney mentioned are super important for us as internationals to get accustomed to all these different ambient situations that are here comparing to our country. I can only speak from my experience in Mexico, and it's very different from the US in the sense that it's public and private, completely separate from each other. And you learn a lot of, our clinical skills are going to be judged, obviously, but in the clinical situation in different hospitals, different, and obviously it was here also. being assigned to a mentor it's something that for in my experience doesn't have a true value, because I mean I matched where I wanted to match, and it was kind of a dream for me, and now it's true. So thanks to the Bridge program and everybody's help, obviously too. My mentor is Dr. Siklik, a surgical oncologist who has always opened all the doors for me. Never don't think that it's as easy as it sounds. The doors are open, but we have to walk and we have to learn to run eventually and get caught up with everything. So it's rough at times, especially with the match and everything. Due dates, class, research projects we get. But I mean, getting ready for internship and residency, it's not going to be always that simple. So I started first getting settled in research activities in my classes, and started, I progressed to the clinical side of things, going to cases with Dr. Siklik, and then clinic, and I started getting to know the team, and eventually I started rounding and being with the team most of the time in the hospital, and in the afternoons working on my research, which was kind of hectic at times, but it's something we definitely need, and if the doors are open, and which is something that is awesome here. It's something that doesn't have a true value until you're here and you get to work.
Excellent. I should add, thank you so much. I would add to that, so UCSD has 98 ACGME accredited residencies and fellowships, and then another 40 that are not ACGME accredited. And so there's almost every thing available here in terms of subspecialty training. There are now just about 1,000 residents and fellows, another 450 or 500 medical students, and then 1,400 clinical faculty. And so there's every opportunity to succeed. It is very different in the US from the other countries that I have experience with, and it sounds like with you also. Not to say that the training is necessarily better in one place than another, but it is different. And so the clinical skills training, even for instance for the USMLE2 CS, the exact two exactly equal applicants, one from the US and one from another country, will score differently because the test is scored differently here, not because their clinical skills are different. So there are many nuances like that that just reflect on it being a different system, and a little bit of experience goes a long way in terms of overcoming those sorts of obstacles to success.
Thank you both for your presentations. At this time, we'd like to open for your questions. And we'll start, there has been one question already asked about whether there are loans or scholarships available for the bridging program or other programs. And at this time, we do not, from the university, offer loans or scholarships. Some of our scholars in the program do find opportunities in their home country for scholarship or some type of payback support. But through UCSD specifically, we do not offer loans or scholarships, and we understand that that can be a bit challenging, but at this time we're unable to do that. One thing I'd like to mention, we are adding something to the Bridge program actually starting in July for individuals who've completed their Step 1 exam but not yet taken Step 2 CS and or CK. We are going to begin offering optional Step 2 preparation in the program. So, and it would also actually be a great refresher course even for anyone who's already taken the Step 2 exams to get the content from the faculty here at UC San Diego. So are there other questions at this time? Please go ahead and feel free to type them in.
The big advantage of adding a program like that is that it shortens the time frame for between medical school and residency. Any extended preparation for the USMLE is really, the time becomes more of a problem than the score for most of the international scholars that I've seen over the years. And so be careful how you decide to handle that. For most US programs, the time between finishing school and taking the USMLEs can be anywhere from 3 to 8 weeks. Whereas some of the preparatory programs go on for months and months and months and months. Yes. Yes. So don't do that.
Wonderful. We have a question, Dr. Delaney, about internship year and applying for an internship before matching for residency. Maybe if you would be so kind as to explain the nuances of that and if there's differences in the application procedure.
Right. So internship is very different in the U.S. than in I'm guessing the Middle East, where to complete your your medical doctorate in many other countries requires completing the internship as part of that, and that's not the way it is in the United States. Internship is year one of the residency, and so one can't apply for an internship outside of the match. So there are different kinds of internships. There are standalone one-year internships that are meant to fill requirements for some specialties, like neurology, for instance. One can do an internship year in internal medicine, and then do the second, third, and fourth years of neurology, and that's true with radiology, with ophthalmology, with many specialties. By and large, most of the programs are categorical, where the internship is actually just one of the 4 or 5 or 7 years that someone may need to finish their residency. And in the U.S., there's a rule that's all in, it's called, and every spot that's available must be made available and filled through the match. And so if one tried to apply directly to institutions, I'd be surprised if you even hear a response, but the response, if there was one, would be no. So you need to go through the match. The program gets in big trouble for entertaining those kinds of discussions, the residency program. So I hope that helps.
I think the next question has to do with what kind of clinical role can you play when you're either here in our one-year bridging program or even our one to 2 month ACE program. So again, Dr. Delaney, maybe you could share the technical aspect of the rules about observer versus hands-on contact, and Jorge, perhaps you can share your experience as a scholar.
Right. So international physicians are different than medical students, and so coming to the U.S., it's as a physician, it's not like coming and doing an away rotation as a medical student. It means somehow having malpractice insurance in the United States, having other vetting, and so that can be complex. And so if you're applying to different sorts of programs for clinical experience in the US, you'll find them asking you those sorts of questions. The actual rules in terms of what one can do actually varies from state to state in the United States, and so very different in one place than another. Here in California, without getting into the fineries of the rules, an international physician, if you're in the room with a licensed physician, licensed California physician, you can essentially be their hands. You can examine the patient, you can take the history, you can discuss the case with the faculty and residents and around. The important difference from the regulator standpoint is that they don't want the unlicensed physician actually providing treatment. So that's where that stops. And so the same would apply in the operating room also. One can observe, one can discuss what's going on with the surgeons or the nurses, but in terms of actually treating the patient, that's where it ends. We certainly abide by those rules, but there are knowing the fineries of those rules allows for opportunities both here and in our affiliated hospitals that we do our best to maximize your clinical experience.
Jorge, would you like to share your experience with us?
Yes, the clinical's role we get as of exposure is excellent in the sense that we, like Dr. Delaney said, we are in every scenario. We can be in the clinic, we can be in the hospital, in the patient room, in the ER. We don't have a primary role, obviously, because we can't, but we can have a secondary role, and as well as in the operating room, and the trust and the confidence that the residents and the team start to develop with your judgment is also incredibly important. I mean, I got to know all the residents that rotated on my mentor's division. I talked to them about everything since the patient's history, their conditions, treatments. Yeah, at the point that I even got trusted because of my language to speak to the patients and translate. We can get authorized for being translators, but only if the physician is there with you, taking a test. But it's, I mean, all those little things that you start putting on your jar, and at the end of the year, it can be a small jar because you didn't add, or it can be a huge bag and help you a lot. Obviously in the match and other attendings also knowing your involvement and at some points even asking for your involvement because of they trusting and knowing that you've been there day in, day out and know what most of the patients have and the treatments and the residents, and you've been there and discussed their conditions and treatments and diagnostic tests with them. So yeah, I mean, it can seem small because we're not able to operate or have our hands physically there doing something, but it's as big as you want it to make it for yourself.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. I'd like to add too that we, through some of our programs, offer experience with standardized patients, also with enhanced clinical skills training through different boot camps from our residency programs here at UCSD. So every person in our bridge program, as an example, and if you're here for ACE, depending on the time of the year, could have clinical skills enhancement in things like neurology, orthopedics, radiology, pediatrics. We kind of go through the whole gamut of disciplines across the year. Did you want to add?
Yes, I was going to echo the well-spoken comments of Jorge in that the sort of the overriding primary training mantra that the faculty have all been brought up in over their careers. The ACGME is the institution that ultimately controls all residency training in the United States, and their overlying mantra is a graduated level of responsibility. And so, as Jorge said, if one shows up and just sits quietly in the corner and tries to take everything in, that's okay. But what the faculty are used to is somebody showing them I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and learning to trust them. And with that comes more responsibility, and ultimately the idea that, wow, he would be a good resident for us. And that's the entire idea.
Great, thank you. I see another question, someone who's been in our ACE program in the past. We can't see what your name is, but hello. Yeah. and has a question about the support, ongoing support, and what can this person do. They unfortunately didn't match this year. I'd just like to point out for anyone who participates in our ACE program or our bridging program, any of the number of programs we offer here at UCSD, just because you're not active in the program any longer does not mean that we're not here to support you. So some of the services we continue to offer to people who've been in our programs like ACE is review of your personal statement and application, looking over your CV. We can set up a phone meeting, since most people aren't located here in the country, with Dr. Delaney as a follow-up in advance of this year's match. So we're always happy to help people who participate in our programs for time to come. And I would say don't give up hope. We've had people who've participated in the match more than once and ended up being successful. Would you like to?
Absolutely, you're still part of the family, so don't.
You can run, but you can't hide.
We're happy to help that way. Ultimately, success in the match depends on the experiences one builds, and time and time again, we've seen individuals with very unfortunate circumstances that have affected either the amount of time they've spent in training, or that hindered their medical school performance. It would bring tears to your eyes, but who persevered and ultimately succeeded, sometimes through 2 or even 3 match cycles. And so if the willingness is there, there is almost always a way to make it work out. It just takes persistence. So we're certainly happy to help.
Great. And just as a note to all of you, if you would like to seek that additional help, probably anyone who's interfaced with us knows all too well at this point, the best contact is the hsinternational@ucsd.edu email. It's being typed onto the chat right now in case you don't already have that. There is one more question. What do program directors value most when reviewing applications, particularly for IMGs? As a former program director, would you like to take that question on?
I believe that's to me, yes. That list that I showed earlier in the presentation is almost verbatim off of the summary slide of a survey that was done of all program directors who responded after the match. And as I said, we've been handling these programs for about 8 years. I've been in graduate medical education here at UCSD for about 18 years. And I can tell you the real bottom line is that the program director needs to feel comfortable that even though the training was different, the training was somewhere else, that this individual applicant is ready to go, that they will be a competent intern, that they know how the hospital works, how these systems work. And most of those things are things that we can directly help you with in the months leading up to the match.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for participating today. I hope that you found it useful. We'll be sending out a post-webinar survey, so expect to receive that in your mailbox. And we love your suggestions for future webinars. We're going to plan to continue to do these. We've had a really great response so far. So again, we always appreciate your input and feedback on topics that would be helpful. And we'll look forward to talking with you again in the future. And thank you again, Jorge and Dr. Delaney.